Hello, today we're back here with Stu. Thanks very much.
Sure.
We're going to take a look at a transitional period for the Canadian Army, and that was World War II. They switched between what had traditionally been the standard handgun of the Army, which was a revolver, and moved into a semi-automatic pistol. And we have two examples of those here in front of us. Let's start with the first one, which would be the revolver.
Sure. This one here is a Smith Wesson M&P series. It's actually chambered in 38 380, but can take 38 Smith & Wesson cartridges. 38 Smith & Wesson is a lot more popular or prevalent you can find in the latter. You just have to be aware that they'll have 2 points of aim and impact because of that.
Right. Can you give a little bit of the description on it?
Sure.
Barrel length?
Yeah, no problem. The barrel length is, I think if I remember correctly, around 4¼ inches in length. This is considered to be a restricted, not a prohib pistol because of the barrel length.
Right.
It's a traditional revolver where it's double action and single action, and it holds 6 cartridges.
All right. Now this was used obviously pre-war, and then into the war, and then we started to replace it with actually a firearm we still use today in the Army, which is the Browning HiPower, which we have here on our left. Can you go over that one?
Sure, no problem. This here operates with a principle called short recoil. So the barrel and the slide are locked for a certain distance as it goes rearward, and then it unlocks. It's semi-automatic, magazine fed. The magazine would traditionally hold 13 rounds of 9mm, but because of the laws of our country, we're only allowed to have 10 rounds in it each.
Right, and it is a single action only.
That is correct. Single action only with manually applied safety.
Right. And it is not in any way a polymer or plastic gun, as they would call it. It is a heavy all-metal pistol.
Exactly.
A couple of the interesting things about it is when you look at something like this, it's got a very old-fashioned feel to it. Very small in the grips. And this wasn't an option that could be changed. It was just the way it was.
Sure.
But it was still a reasonably accurate pistol for the time. And then moving on to the HiPower, I'm not going to be able to balance. This took a while to get set up before we went. We have the Browning here, which was not only a change in firearm, but a change in ammunition as well, to what became a standard for pistols within the Western Alliance, NATO, as it were. So we're going to take a look at them in further detail. We're going to take them apart. We have shot the Brownings on the range on previous videos. You can take a look. Hopefully someday we'll get at some of the revolvers as well. But they are interesting and very historic in their own right. So thank you very much for showing them to us, and we'll take a look at them in detail.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, we're back. We got the camera set up to take a closer look at the pistols as we take them apart. I already covered the Browning on a previous video that I did with one I have, but mine's a new one. And you were pointing out that there's some differences between that and the war production Brownings.
That's correct.
Can you, let's do the Browning first, and then we'll go back in time to the revolver.
Okay, sure. Well, I'll just move this off the mat for the time being. We're going to make sure the pistol's safe, chamber's clear. And I have to put the magazine in because these pistols have a magazine safety. So what I'm going to do now is just a field strip.
And again, we covered this in detail on the other video I did.
And so if you can remember, on the civilian HiPower, your extractor was actually an external extractor that lie on the right side of the slide.
Yes, it does. You
can see on this one here, your extractor is an internal extractor. And that's one of the changes that they did when they commercialized them. If you can think about the 1911, it had the same sort of idea of where the extractor was on the inside. The biggest problem that they had with this, it simplified the operation. It made it easier to make some stuff, but at the same time, with this cut in there, you'd also have a pin that would hold it in place and the spring. And what happened is that because of the cut, you came really close to certain critical areas, such as the track for your sear connecting arm. And because of if you can do a cross section, you can actually see the cut where this is, and where the cut of where your extractor would be. There would be only a small, fine web of material, and over time, you'd actually crack that web, and where the hole is for your extractor would actually propagate a crack as well to that area as well.
So they were creating a failure point, basically.
Exactly. And again, because of the way that the military ones were created, you wouldn't have that problem. And again, since it was a round hole, you would rarely get cracks propagating from a round hole. You get cracks propagating from, say, a 90-degree angle.
Right, right. Any other differences between the military and the civilian version?
Another difference is that what they would do is with the serial connecting arm on the civilian ones, they'd spring load it. They'd put a cutout through here and almost like an arm or tab that would go across, and that would replicate or facilitate the idea of a firing pin safety. So once this pushes down, it would lift up away from the firing pin and it would allow the firing pin to travel forward.
Very good. All right, well, let's put this one back together.
Sure.
And then we'll move on to its predecessor in the service.
Okay. So slide, barrel, your return spring. You got to make sure that you put them in properly. There's the right way and the wrong way. This is the right way. You can almost see that you got a contour here and it sort of lifts up. If you look this way here, they're in line with each other. The wrong way, the contour drives down, and you can see here that they're not in line with each other.
And you also find that the guide rod and the barrel are no longer parallel.
Yes.
Which becomes an issue as well.
Exactly. So once it's in properly, engage the safety. You can then install your slide catch lever, slide lock lever, release. And there
now,
you go.
one other thing I want to point out that we were talking about just before we turned the cameras on is there's a sticker on the grip of that pistol. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it as a reproduction, but the originals would have had this as well. And can you just tell us what that is?
Sure. What happened is that Canada was part of what's called the Lend-Lease program to Russia and China, where we called, I think, a mutual aid program. And we gave things like aircraft and small arms. And you can see right here it says Canada in English, Canada in Russian, and in Chinese. And one of the most interesting things about the Lend-Lease program is what didn't happen. The English pistols were also attracted a lot of attention to the Chinese, and they wanted a new pistol to replace their old pistols that they had from Germany, the C96s, and they enjoyed a pistol that had a shoulder stock and a holster combination. And so Canada developed a whole bunch of HiPowers with the ladder sight, a cutout for your shoulder stock, but only a small handful went to China for trials and for samples, and the final shipment didn't go because of politics.
Right, and we shot one of those pistols actually on the range last time we were out.
That's correct.
Okay, so moving on from that, we'll go back in time to when we used a revolver, and that was the Smith Wesson 38. So a lot of people aren't familiar with how you would strip down a revolver. Obviously, there's not as many parts, but you can still take the cylinder off for cleaning and stuff like that. So can you just quickly run through that with us?
Sure, no problem. You have your cylinder release on this side here. You push in towards the cylinder, and you can just pop out the cylinder from the right to the left. One of the biggest things I have to say is with firearm or revolver etiquette is when you close the cylinder, close it gently. Don't sort of snap the cylinder into place. You will actually bend and warp the crane. For most operations, people actually just clean it like this here, but it can get kind of awkward. So what you can do is you can get yourself a nice little screwdriver, remove this front screw, and then once you remove the cylinder, the crane and cylinder will come out as a whole. And then it's a whole lot easier to clean the cylinder. Another interesting fact about this pistol here is it's marked with a C broad arrow. So this actually saw service with Canadians.
Now, something I've noticed on some revolvers nowadays is you can get them in multiple calibers, so that you can actually get a 9mm cylinder and a 38 cylinder, and they're interchangeable.
Sure.
And this would basically be the same way you would do it with those.
Sure.
To flip them around. Again, clean it as per normal as you would with any firearm. And then obviously to put it back together, you're just putting the cylinder back in and locking the rod in place.
Exactly. The biggest thing is whenever you do anything like this, do not lose that little small screw.
Yeah, that could ruin your day if you're about to go shooting.
Exactly. Another thing you want to do is make sure you have the right tool for the right job. I got here gunsmith tools, screwdrivers, and I make sure that it's the right size for the screw. Don't get anything too big, too small, and especially don't get anything too wide, because then you have the potential to damage the outside of the surface as well. So again, is take care. It's an investment. You don't want to ruin it.
And firearms will last. We've seen here. I mean, these are firearms going back into the 30s and 40s, and I know that there are people that have firearms that go back into the 1800s and still shoot them today. Old Colt revolvers and scobies and stuff like that are still out there being shot and enjoyed because they've been taken care of.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, Stu, thank you very much for showing us these two pistols.
No problem.